Today we're going to figure out how to win the waiting game, which is one that we all are familiar with. But I ran across a quote this week that I have to make it the quote of the week from the lead guitarist for the Eagles, Joe Walsh. He said it was a lot more fun being 20 in the 70s than being 70 in the 20s. And I remember being 20 in the 70s. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but if I was one of the Eagles, I probably would agree, because I think they had a lot of fun. But what's interesting about this is it does reflect this waiting game that we're all involved in, because in our early years, we usually are looking forward to growing up, to later years, to the time when things get better, and then we get into the later years and we start looking backwards and think how wonderful that was. But but there's a lot of waiting involved in actually both sides of that, because the older we get, I think the more we wait till the end. We're gonna check out one of these days, and we'll get to that point. But when Jesus said to Pilate that his kingship was not of this world, the average reader assumes he was referring to the coming of the long anticipated kingdom of God. This is a real strong image that we hold, especially when we are thinking in terms of religion. You could talk to almost anyone on the street that is familiar with the Christian approach to life and ask them when the kingdom would come. When is the kingdom coming? They won't know the answer to that, and they'll probably quote the scripture that says nobody knows, nobody but the Father knows. But the idea is that they anticipate it coming. So they're saying it's not here, it's coming, and so they're waiting for that kingdom to come. It's a very interesting mindset. If you are in this type of thinking and you are studying, you're doing your best to grasp these spiritual ideas, there's a reason that you're doing that. You are building up the soul, building up the consciousness, so you can experience a better life, experience something better than you are experiencing now. It's another form of this waiting game. And so what I have talked about often in the past, kind of the core of my ministry, is that the soul is already complete. There's nothing to wait for. It's again like waiting for the universe to be complete. When will the universe be done? And the fact is, probably never. It'll never be done. But does it work right now? Is it working now? And so that's kind of the question that we're going to be asking ourselves. We're never going to be done. We're never going to be, as long as we're alive, we're going to be alive. We're going to be anticipating something. There's nothing wrong with anticipation at all. But if we are saying, as the typical mindset is, life as it is not good enough, that it must get better. It will get better, and my study or my prayer work or my whatever I'm doing to prepare. The early Christian was taught to be good, just be good to each other and take care of each other. That was a big thing, especially with Paul. Paul was real big into morality and being good to one another. It was an important message because the kingdom was coming soon. And so let's all be good, and let's all get along, and let's all pool our wealth so nobody lacks anything. And, let's make the very best of this day, because tomorrow he could show up, and we want to make sure that we get in. We want to make sure we're part of the club, and that we get into the pearly gates, whatever form that might take. So when Jesus told Pilate that his kingship was not of this world, it's very easy for any of us to think, well, if it's not of this world, then it must be of another world. And it is. It's of another world. But what is that other world? That's the question we want to answer today. Is it someplace in the future? Is it someplace up in the sky? Is it someplace away from us? The world I believe he was talking about is the world of normal perception, the world that we have built in our own consciousness that is based on appearances. Things look this way, so I should feel this way. I equate these things all the time. One of these days, something out there is going to change. Something's going to get better. Our Savior is going to come, get rid of the Romans, get rid of the corruption in the temple, get rid of whatever problems we have, and my life is going to get better then. And so, but I can anticipate that and get excited about it. And so that's what a lot of people are thinking, that, you know, I become a part of a group that knows the kingdom is coming. I'm saved. I'll be part of it. And that's a good feeling. But I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for that to happen. Is that what Jesus was talking about? And I have to say again, I've said it many times, that I don't think he was making a 2,000 plus year projection for when the kingdom was coming. If you really look at what he said, and I'm going to pick up on this in a little slightly different way next week also, but the kingdom that he talked about was already here, and what could that possibly mean? Obviously, there's suffering. There's people that are, could live a better life, that life does need to change for them. How is that done? What I think Jesus was, as I've told you, is a mystic. He was a mystic. And the mystic says God is everywhere present. God is not far off. God is not up in the sky, someplace separate from us. God is here. If God is here, that must mean God is not a human in human form. God must be something else. And what Jesus said he was is spirit. God is spirit. What's that? Spirit, when we think of spirit, is something you can't see. It's like the wind. It blows, it moves the branches in the trees, but you can't see it. You can feel it. When Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world, he's saying the world that we're thinking that he's going to show up in, that's not the world he's talking about. I'm looking at this world and saying there's a lot of problems here, and I need a savior. We need somebody to show up and straighten things out. But his kingship is not of this world. It's of another world, but this other world is not somewhere distant. It's very present. So he's talking about a presence. He's talking about being present, that his kingship, where he rules, the teachings he's giving, are not of the conventional world we're talking about, and yet it's a world that we live in. And that will make sense in a moment. But he was a mystic, but he did not teach other people how to be mystics. And I want to let all of us off the hook on that. He taught from the basis of the mystic. And the basis of the mystic is, when we think of a river, it flows one way. When we think of the mystic, he teaches the flow of life is one way, from the inside out. So when we address our worldly problems, we begin within. We begin within ourselves. He taught didn't say this in so many words, but the nature of the soul is light, the true self. Let your light shine. That is an inside-out job. It's from within out. The river flows one way. The mystic teaches, everything I'm going to teach you is based on the idea that it begins within you and works itself out. That's why Jesus spent so much time talking about consciousness. But he talked about it in a way that people could understand. He used parables. The kingdom is like this, it's like that. It's ways to get a handle on, if I'm going to change my life, I have to change the way I think about life. And one of the ways a significant way that he taught that we are to change is stop waiting for greater good to unfold and begin to affirm that it's here now. That the light that we are, there's nothing preventing that from shining except me saying, someday it's going to come. I'm waiting. So my waiting, that attitude of waiting says, life now's not as good as it could be. Can be better, and it will be better when something outside of myself changes. So that's an outside-in approach. It's not the approach of the mystic. Jesus taught from the basis of the mystic. God is everywhere present, centered within you. It's your light. You are the light of God. Let your light shine. That's an inside-out proposition, not an outside-in. Not look up to the sky and wait for the light, but close your eyes. Go within that inner room, that inner closet, shut the door, and find that inner light. And once you find it, you don't put it under a bushel. You let it shine. So there's so many ways that he talked about this from the inside out. That's the way of the mystic. The way of the evangelist is outside in. It's coming. It's coming someday. So that's an easy way to remember the difference. The gospel writers were outside-in people. They were outside-in writers. Their model is outside-in. The kingdom is coming. Jesus is your Messiah. Jesus himself was an inside-out kind of guy. It's not me that you're looking for. It's you. It's your light, your inner experience, your connection with God. Why do you call me good? There's only one that's good, and that's God. So it's a whole shift in perception. So we have a teacher that was a mystic teaching from the mystical foundation of inside out. The river flows in but one direction. The cosmic river flows in but one direction. That's why I think Jesus probably called his own ministry, his own teachings, the way. The river flows one direction. That's the way. The way of the mystic is inside out. It's one direction. It's not outside in. And anytime you read anything in the Bible that makes you think that it's coming from without. See, that's the whole thing of the 10 virgins at the wedding feast, this warning that if you're not prepared, it's going to come and you're not going to get it. This is the influence of the writer, outside in. Be prepared, watch, wait, be good, do good things, do all the things that you're supposed to do for when he comes. It's a waiting game. Make sure your lamps are full of oil. Jesus said they put those words in his mouth. They put that message in his mouth. That's a modified context. And it's modified to be taken out of the mystical meaning and put in the evangelical meaning. And when we see that, it's very easy to see. Once we get it, it's very easy to see what these writers did. And probably many times it was not the original writers themselves. We have no idea because we have nothing close to the original writings. But it was probably scribes that followed, writers, editors that followed those original writings. The mystic would refer to a different way of experiencing life here and now. And I've said this before, that the mystic would not say we need to change the world. The mystic would say you can change the way you experience the world. There's a huge difference. In one, if we're going to change the world, we've got a big job ahead of us, and we've got to get everybody on board. It's a big deal. And there's always groups doing that. Just join us, we'll change the world. But that's not what the mystic ever does. The mystic never says, if you'll join that group, you'll be saved. The mystic says, if you become still and look at your life from the higher perspective of your complete soul, you'll see everything differently. You will stop fighting that person out there, and you'll begin to deal with your reaction to that person. You don't need to change them to be happy. if that's true, you'll never be happy, because if you do change them, you'll be happy with that one, but then there's another one. We've got a lot of people on this planet, and they're standing in line waiting to come and ruffle our feathers. They're all just waiting to upset us. And it's not really true, but it seems like it's true. There's always something that will rob us of our peace of mind. But the mystic acknowledges that. They will say, yes, there is. That is true. If you are an outside-in person, but I'm teaching inside out. I'm saying, if you're upset with that person, look first at why you're upset. What is going on in you that is reacting to that person? And I want to talk more in depth on this topic next week. But one of the first things we can do is we can destroy that person. We can imagine that we have a beam of light, of love, coming out of our eyes, and we look at them and we vaporize them. Because what we're vaporizing is not the reality of that person. We vaporize that, and then we say, what's left? Okay, they're vaporized, but I'm still having this reaction. So that means that reaction is within me. So I do have an inside-out job. I do have something going on. Because I vaporized that person, they're gone. They're not even in my life anymore, in my thinking, in my imagination. But they still upset me. And how can that be? It's because I carry them around. I carry around this thing, this offense they committed, and I'm reacting to that. Is there anything I can do about that? Well, it gets into this whole idea of, am I evolving a strength or protecting a weakness? And it always comes down to, I'm protecting a weakness. Am I willing to give up that thing I'm protecting? Am I willing to take a look at it and see if I can overcome it in the quiet? That's the way of the mystic. It's not change the person, it's change the experience you're having with the person. And to do that, what we tend to do is we'll close our eyes and think about that person, and we'll think about all the things we should have said to them, and all the things we're going to say next time we see them. And so next time we see them, they catch us off guard by saying something nice about us. So all the things we're going to say just go out the window. They don't work anymore. So we don't want to do that. If we do that, but we should think of another way. If we're doing from the inside out, we're never going to actually deal with that person in that relationship. We're going to always deal with our perception. Because if we want to have a good relationship with that person, what are we doing? We're waiting. We're waiting for them to change, surely, and we will help them change. We will help them see correctly. And we're good at that. But it never does work. How many people do you think you've actually changed in your life? And I'm not going to ask for numbers, but there's a lot of people I would like to change. I would like to change the way they think of me, the way they think of themselves, the way they think of everything. But I don't really know that I've changed anybody. I know people have changed from what I've said, but it's because they were ready to change. They wanted to change. It's not any power that I have or any power you have. If somebody's ready to change and the right word comes and they get it, that's in their court. But the mystic would refer to a different way of experiencing life here and now. Those who were waiting for the Messiah envisioned a fundamental change in the social and political world order. Jesus was talking about a change that could happen within one's normal life. Can't you see that after his death, how the whole view of him could change? While he was alive, he was probably doing things that really got people's attention. I think he was a healer. People believed in him. They trusted him enough to change their minds, from some lifetime perceptions that they had. And they experienced healing, and he would say, your faith has made you whole. He would not say, I made you whole. He would say, your faith has made you whole. And that's that's an inside-out observation. Something in them changed at the deeper level. So he did not try to change people. He would argue with people in some ways, but not try to change them. Life can be different with your life just exactly as it is. The Romans do not have to be overthrown, and the temple does not have to be cleansed for your life to start getting better. That's what the message I think that people probably really responded to, that they heard him say. Things that, well, I'm here, I'm suffering, I'm struggling through life, and I want to make my life better, so I'm waiting for this Messiah to come. The Jews had been waiting for a long time. That's why when somebody would come up and they would be different, they would show some talent, some authority, and some way that everybody's ears would perk up. Is this the one? Is this the guy we've been waiting for? So while he was alive, I'm sure there were a lot of people, or a number of people, that thought that. Here he is. He's finally showed up. Then he's put to death. Now what? Our dream is blown, so we got to wait again. No, we don't. Let's make a new story. He'll come back. He rose from the dead. He's going to come back. Okay, we'll wait again. So everything's good. If we're in the waiting game, in the waiting mode, if we want to be there, there's always a way to do it. There's always a reason to do it. But he's saying, like the man he saw by the pool of Bethesda, had been laying there for 38 years, couldn't get to the water. I'm waiting for somebody to come and help me. He comes along and says, do you really want to be healed? It's an inside-out job. And the guy wasn't sure about that. He said, I don't know. I just, this is. So he says, take up your bed and walk. And he did. Something in his tone, something in his eye, something in his countenance encouraged the man to take up his bed and walk. He didn't have to wait anymore. So that's the same thing. Something was present. Even before Jesus showed up, there was something present that would have enabled that man to do exactly that same thing. But it took a catalyst. It took someone to say, just do this. You don't have to wait. Just do it. And I think that's what the mystic is saying. Your life, let's don't go out and try to change everything, try to fix everything, because you'll never do it. Let's take up our beds and walk right in the life we're in right now, right where we're at right now. And this is not as hard as you think. I know it sounds like it is, because we've all taken this approach many times. But the key, he gives in another kind of a enigmatic statement. Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. That doesn't sound like an answer. It sounds like a mystery. What's he mean by that? This passage is typically interpreted as Jesus pointing out that earth is not his true home and that those who follow him should not expect much in the way of earthly comforts. Foxes have holes, birds of the nest have places to go, but followers of mine don't. So prepare yourself for a rough life. See, that's probably the voice of the evangelist, the voice of the writer, because they were experiencing a rough life. They were under persecution. The people in Jesus' day were not so much under persecution. They certainly weren't under Christian persecution because there were no Christians. It was not a concept that had been born yet. But the mystic understands that unlike the fox or the bird, the human being is not bound by the strict parameters of instinct. There are no set outcomes, no place to lay our head. This is not a negative statement, but one intended to free the mind of restricting preconceptions. Somebody does something to you, you're having a reaction to it. That's the fox with the hole and the bird with the nest. It's a predictable thing. That happened, so I'm this way. I'm having a reaction. Jesus said, no, you don't lay your head there. That's not where the Son of Man, or a human being with the greatest capacity of all animals, human being has the greatest. We don't lay our head there. There's no place that we lay our head. There's no set outcome. In other words, what they said to you is not a guarantee that you're going to be miserable. It's a choice. You make that choice. It's not something you have to do. This is what the mystic would say. Birds of the air and the foxes they're run by instinct. They're living in their environment in a very beautiful way. But it's predictable. The moment a robin lays an egg, you know what kind of nest the chick inside that egg is going to build. You can draw a picture of it. They all look the same. If it's a dove, you see that this flimsy little bunch of twigs in the tree is the nest of the dove, and they all do the same thing. None of them ever learn how to build a nest. They just keep building these flimsy things, but they're very good at it. They're very successful at it. That's not the point. The point is they're locked into that. It's very predictable for them. And if you look at the human being, you say, well, of course I react this way. Isn't that predictable? Look what they said to me. Look what's going on in my life. I should be miserable. It's very predictable. No, it's not. You are the Son of Man. You are a human being with a capacity that is greater than any animal. You are beyond instinct. Instinct is a good thing for where it is, for where it operates, but the human being has imagination, has something greater than instinct. We're not just here reacting to conditions. We have the ability to take a new route, a new way. There's no place to lay our heads in this sense. No set outcomes. That's a better way to think of it. There's no set outcome to anything going on in our life. We set the outcome. We tend to define the outcome by looking at the nature of the thing and reacting to it, outside in. That's how we're trained. That's how we've all been trained. That's our whole culture, outside in. What kind of credentials do you have? What kind of degrees do you have? What kind of successes have you had? That's how I will think of you. Inaccurate. All souls are expressions of the infinite, and we don't want to pigeonhole anything, although we've been trained to do it. If this is happening this way, then I must be having a certain kind of reaction. But there's no place in reality where we should lay our heads, because we're something more than the instinctually driven animal. We have an imagination. That imagination can say, yes, that appears to be this way, but do I have to respond the way I am? And the answer is no. The mystic would say it's an inside-out job. It's an inside-out experience. There's another way to experience it. You don't have to lay by the pool another second. You can get up right now, because everything that you need to get up and walk is here. We don't always see it, but that's okay. Go off by yourself. Don't try to solve this in front of your enemy. Don't try to solve it in front of the thing that's bothering you. Go off by yourself until you find your center of power, till you find that place in yourself where you're okay with whatever it is that's going on. As I said, if somebody says something offensive to you, close your eyes, vaporize them with love. Make sure it's love. Love dissolves that which is not for our highest good. See it that way. The beam that's coming out of my eyes and vaporizing them is love. And I'm not vaporizing a human being. I'm vaporizing my perception of this human being. There's a big difference. You know what's interesting? There's a story in the Old Testament about, I can't remember what tribe it was. They were surrounded by all these bad guys, outnumbered, guaranteed to be annihilated in the morning, because that's when the attack was to occur. And there's this thing going on. I should have read it before I came, but it just now came to me. Whoever the prophet was, said the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. Actually, that line comes up several times, but I love that, because when you try to handle the problem, the battle is yours. When you're out there face to face with it and you're trying to fix it, the battle is yours. When you go within yourself and allow that to, vaporize your enemy whether it's a condition or a person, whatever it is, just see them vaporized and actually see it. You know, where the Star Trek where Scotty beams everybody up and they dissolve right in front of your face, kind of one of those things. But in a loving way, they're being vaporized in love. So you're setting the problem that you're having, because you're reacting to that person you just vaporized. You're setting the problem aside and saying, now, what's the issue now? They're gone. And you can more easily identify what it is that you're reacting from, that level of consciousness you're reacting from. This is what the mystic would say. You can't do anything about them, but you can do everything about you, about where you're coming from. And this is easiest when you're alone, when there's nobody else around. You can actually let them go or let the situation go, and you can come into yourself and find that center of power. If we say that the soul is an expression of God and God is life, love, power, and intelligence, that means you already possess the power. And how does power express? It expresses as strength. You have the strength at this moment to let that go, to stop placing value on a reaction that is killing you, that is taking you down to a level you don't really want. You have that power now. Your power is not diminished in any way whatsoever. It never is. Because you and I are expressions of God, and God is life, love, power, and intelligence. The soul is life, love, power, and intelligence. We're not powerless in this regard. And we can express this power as the strength to let go of the energy. And if you think of it in terms of energy, it's a lot easier to deal with. I don't have to do anything to that person. It's the energy that I have drummed up around that person. It's a lot easier to take a more objective view of things when we do this. The Jews of Jesus' day were anticipating a Messiah, someone who to dramatically change their life in ways they could not possibly do themselves. Jesus was telling them that their hope for a better life did not depend on divine intervention, that they could open themselves to new possibilities of experience right in the midst of their present life. And this is actually demonstrated at the woman at the well. The way that Jesus taught suggests that positive changes can come about in the most mundane of daily tasks. One can learn to find adventure in fetching the daily supply of water, plowing the field, or doing the wash. The woman at the well, think about her. If she was alive today and she remembered what happened, she would have a YouTube channel that was viral. The story she could tell. I met him. I actually met him. And I met him while I was getting water, doing the most mundane of tasks. I met the most famous person on the planet. And I actually had a conversation with a one-on-one of all things. You know, that's kind of an illustration in itself. Like, what's this? What are we waiting for? You know, it could be doing the most mundane of tasks that we meet the Messiah. We meet the one that's coming to save us. And that is us. That is that deeper level of consciousness within us. Jesus had no doubt observed that those who constantly anticipate a better life rarely achieve it. The good is never good enough. The better life, one imagines, never quite arrives. It's not to say that life doesn't get better, because our life does get better. But is it ever good enough? Is it ever finished? Is it ever complete? Do we ever feel like, I'm happy, I'm fulfilled? If we just keep life exactly like it is right now, everything will be good. There's still something in us that longs for better things. And so what we want to do is say, well, I'm in the completed universe right now. I'm living in the perfect environment. Everything around me is just fine as it is. Can we say that? It's hard to say that, because there's things I'll look out and I'll say, I don't want like that. I want to change that. But do I have to? And I might change it. It's not to say that we don't participate in change, but it's looking at the attitude that we have right now. Do I feel incomplete? and what is missing. And when I open myself to the question, what is missing, and I try to answer that question, I'll find it's always me. There's always some aspect of my self-perception that's missing. We win the waiting game by realizing we do not lay our head in any anticipated better condition. It is within all conditions that our highest good awaits. Jesus encouraged his listeners to lift their awareness to the miracle of the presence of God, found in every new moment. That's the message of the mystic. So when you think of your life, just start saying to yourself, my life is perfect exactly as it is. I'm perfect exactly as I am. That's not easy to believe. But if you can get to the point in yourself, in quiet of your own room, and say, I am perfect just as I am, doesn't mean you're done living, doesn't mean you're done growing, but accept yourself, accept your life, accept that person that's giving you a hard time, after you vaporize them, of course, that they're part of your life, they're part of your experience. And what I was saying about the Old Testament story is these guys were surrounded by their enemies. I forgot to finish it. They wake up in the morning and the enemies all destroyed each other. They all attacked each other. And that's how things are so often resolved, is in our minds we think it's got to be done this way. But when we let go and find our center of power again, there are quite possibly other ways that it is resolved, ways we had not thought about. Sorry I left that out, but that's why I had it. So, okay, the waiting game is over. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.